Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk you through question 6 of paper 2 of the Pearson Edexcel English Language GCSE exam. We're using the June 2017 exam paper, and there will be a link below for you to download this if you want to have a look at it yourself and go through it. Okay, so we're on question 6, which is the evaluate question. And basically the techniques for this are exactly the same as they were when you did the evaluate question on paper 1, which on paper 1 is question 3. It's even worded in a very similar way. So if we have a look here, it says, in this extract, there's an attempt to be positive about moving to a smaller house. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. Support your views with detailed reference to the text. Okay, so basically they're saying that the writer's tried to do something and then you need to say how successful it is. And the way to do that is to go through the text and find the relevant parts. And so in this case, the relevant bits is the bits about being positive about moving house. Okay, so let's have a little look at the text. Okay, so this is text 2. So we've already done text 1 on paper 2, but this paper has 2 texts. And so remember, you're going to be having to use both these texts later on in your comparison question. So it's worth, while you're reading through text 2, to think about the ways it's similar or different from text 1. Okay, now it's really important to read this bit at the top, this little kind of blurb at the top, because that really helps you to understand the context of the text. So this says it's an extract from Don't Dread Downsizing, a smaller home makes you feel like newlyweds. It's an edited version of an article that appeared in Woman and Home and the Daily Mail in January 2016. And it's Libby Purvis talks about moving into a smaller home with her husband. Okay, so the things you can tell about that is, first of all, it's a relatively up-to-date text, so it's only a couple of years old, so that's going to be helpful in terms of the language isn't going to be too difficult, hopefully. But when we're thinking about, it's really important to think about the purpose, audience, and the format. So the format's obviously an article, and the audience. Now you've got a few clues here. She's talking about moving into a smaller home with her husband. It makes you feel like newlyweds. Women and Home magazine, Daily Mail. So you can tell it seems to be aimed towards the older woman, somebody who's got a husband and maybe doesn't feel like a newlywed anymore. And the sort of woman that would buy the Daily Mail and Women and Home magazine is probably on the older side. Okay, so probably not really the target audience of a teenager taking GCSE exam. Okay, so we need to try and get into when we're thinking about what the writer's trying to do, they're not trying to do it for you sitting in your GCSE exam, they're trying to do it for the woman, the married woman reading her magazine. Okay, so think about that as who the reader is. It's not really designed to be you. Okay, so we remember, let's have a look back. There's an attempt to be positive about moving to a smaller house. Okay, so what you need to do is to look through the text and find any bits that seem to be positive. Get over the writer. You think that the writer's trying to show that she's positive about moving in a smaller house. So I'll scroll through it and stop when you need to so that you can read it. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to find some bits which you think maybe show positivity. Now, remember that, as I said when we were doing question 3 on paper 1, I don't think it's particularly helpful to use the cite or ties, the themes, ideas, events, and settings. If they are helpful, great. If you think, oh yeah, the setting's really useful here, or there's a real theme of something or other here, that's useful. But don't feel tied down to that. I think it's better just to look for bits that do seem to be positive. And I think actually language and structure, or just kind of the bit of the text, what they're writing about, is often going to be more useful. Okay, so don't feel tied down to using that acronym. Okay, so let's have a look at how we should approach this. Okay, so what I think you should, so this is what I've said, you need to highlight parts of the text that are positive, only use ties or cite if it's helpful. Then you need to write 3 or 4 peel paragraphs. The main thing you need to remember to get in, like we said with paper 1, was make sure you get the evaluation in. So make sure you get that successfully word or other words. We'll have a talk about which other words you could use later. And make sure that you put those in. A good way to start off and to make sure that you do cover all those bases is to use the question in the answer. For example, the writer is successfully positive about moving to a smaller house, for example. Sounds a bit of a strange sentence, but don't worry, you're not getting marks for elegant sentences here. So how many points can you find in the text? A good way as well to evaluate is to maybe find the most successful and least successful. So find something that you think this is a really, really positive bit, and then maybe build up to that from kind of bits that were only a little bit positive. So that's kind of a way that you can make it a bit more sophisticated. Okay. So, and this is an example of a way that you could structure a peel paragraph. Right? There's no obligation to write peel paragraphs. Some people like them as a structure because it means that you remember to get everything in, but they don't have to be in this order, and you don't have to include all of these words as long as you've got your point. So you're talking about that positive about moving house, and as it shows here, you can use language structure or just a little anecdote about that the writer's talking about. You need to have a bit of evidence in there, but it doesn't have to be a quote. You could just go the bit where she writes about how happy she is about this or whatever. That's fine. An explanation and the effect is really, really important. That's where most of the marks are. And so some ways you could write about that are the effect of this is, or this makes the reader feel. And then make sure you've linked it to the question. Make sure you've shown how it's positive or how it's successfully positive. You might include that in your explanation, in which case it's fine. But the peel, the L is there to really remind you that you do need to link back to the question. Okay, so use this if it's helpful. Okay, so we've got an answer here, so we're going to have a look at this one and see what do we think about this. I believe the writer Libby Purvis has successfully achieved a positive attitude when talking about moving house. The extract starts off with, "We did it." The almost instantly grabs the reader's attention as it's cheerful and exciting, which from the very start puts a positive feel on the extract. This already tells the reader that the downsizing was a positive thing. Okay, so that's a good example of starting at the beginning of the text and working through. So it's really quite a good idea to have something from the beginning, something from the middle, and something from the end. Okay, so this could have been improved perhaps by maybe saying why we did it is so positive, and for example, the fact it's a short sentence, you've got the exclamation mark, the fact that it's we, so that it's kind of she's done it as with her and her husband. So you could go into a bit more detail there, but this kind of ticks the boxes in a basic way. So this would probably get you just about into grade 4, but if you did a bit more analysis, you could get a higher mark. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so let's look at this one. The writer uses structure to make moving into a smaller house positive. The writer seems to be telling herself that getting rid of rubbish is good, and every time she gets excited and uses short sentences, we downsize. This makes the reader feel positive, almost as if they can do it, so we can to do it, then so can we attitude is felt here by the reader. Okay, so this is fine again. It's got all the bits in there, but it's not explicitly evaluating. So it would be useful if it had something like this successfully shows how positive it is. I mean, I know it's kind of implied in here, but it's a good idea to kind of really show the examiner that you have been evaluating. Okay, so we're going to have a look now at a few other answers. So this is from one that the examiner would say was kind of more on the top, sort of top marks. I've highlighted on these I've taken a selection of paragraphs here and I've highlighted ways that you can do the evaluation without just saying successfully all the time, but you can be a little bit more subtle. So here we go. Here we have a successful attempt at positivity is made from the very opening sentence. The short sentence opening of "we did it" combined with a punctuation mark has a resounding optimistic tone. Thus, even from the opening, the reader is immediately aware of the positive sentiment. Okay, so that's really similar to that other example we saw, isn't it? It's got the same quote, the same kind of ideas, but it's just done a little bit more sophisticated way, and it talks about the punctuation mark as making it more optimistic. Okay, so there's an example. Another one is the use of humour. So this is another example of the way that you can pick out anything that you want. So so we've looked at kind of short sentences, punctuation marks, but also you can just talk about humour, for example. So the use of humour is another structural technique which, carefully crafted, so there's your evaluation, has also a positive effect. The use of the adjective lethal when describing the World War I khaki canvas thing is a hyperbole, which means exaggeration, which creates humorous effect as the idea is both relatable and laughable, creating a positive, light-hearted atmosphere. Okay, so you can see this person's got the whole Peel paragraph in there because, for example, they've got that link, creating a positive atmosphere, but they haven't structured it in quite such an obvious way, so it's a little bit more sophisticated. Okay, let's have a look at two more paragraphs. In addition, the use of personification. Even the bricks seem to sigh with relief, and a variation in sentence length, which varies the pace, picking up momentum at positive or humorous moments, increases the positive tone, and also used for great effect. Okay, so again, there I've highlighted the evaluation there. Now, this is interesting because the quote there, "the bricks seem to sigh with relief," and the fact it's personification, actually we looked at when we looked at question, I think was it 5? Yeah, so question 5 actually had that quote, but that doesn't matter because it doesn't matter if you've already written about it in a different question. As long as you're making it relevant to this one, that's fine. So that's quite a sneaky little trick, is that you can recycle things that you've already looked at in a different question. Okay, but because in that case you're showing how it's positive. Okay, and then colloquial language is another thing that you can write about. It's demonstrated by the word shipshape. The friendly term gives the impression of a robust room with a positive motherly outlook in life, which is extremely reassuring for the reader, increasing positivity. So again, they've used another evaluative term there and still linked it back to positivity. I'm not sure really about their connotation of shipshape there, robust and motherly, but anyway, that's their choice. But it doesn't really matter if that's what your opinion is and you can back it up, which they have done, then you'll get some marks for that. Okay, so I'm hoping that that is quite reassuring, because you can see that really you can pick out anything in the text that you think creates positivity. So it could be language, it could be structure, it could be humour, it could be a little anecdote that they've said, it could be facts. In a different type of example, you could pick out facts if it was, showing something different. So really, you can pick out whatever you want that's relevant to the question. Okay, and then as long as you make sure that you've included your evidence and your evaluation and you've linked it back to the question, then you'll be kind of raking in the marks on that question. Okay, thanks for watching, and look out for the other questions on paper 2.